Boom, what's up, everybody? Cory Tomlinson. How are we doing today, sir?
Dude, I'm so pumped to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, I'm pretty geeked up. Selfishly is like I'm excited because I'm like super geeked up to like learn about your journey and how you got involved in the sport. And Loki's somebody that matches my energy, right? Like seeing you live in person is like I'm a pretty wild and obnoxious person. So this should make for an interesting episode. That's for damn sure.
Man, I already feel it, and I don't know if people are going to be able to handle the energy overload they're about to
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, they'll have to tune out. But before we get rocking and rolling, as always, we start with a wild or funny story. What you got for the people?
You know what? I have to say, um, one of the biggest misconceptions that people think and are astonished by is a story back when I was 8, 9, all the way up until probably 13 years old. I was actually terrified of being the center of attention. People would sing me happy birthday. I would crawl under the table. I was absolutely terrified of Disney characters. Like you ask my parents and my family, like I had this radar, this sense of like where Disney characters were when we'd go to Disneyland, and I would run the opposite direction. And there was one time my family decided it was a good idea to go to the character breakfast for Easter dinner, or the character di like dining area at the Disneyland
Yeah,
Hotel. And if you can imagine like a big ballroom, you're trapped in four walls, but then all of a sudden just random Disney characters are walking throughout, and I'm just trying to enjoy an Easter meal. Well, I was not enjoying it, and I ended up having that meal under the table.
no.
What was the worst part about it was they found the only character in the room that could get under the table, and it was Alice in Wonderland thinking she could have a tea party with me. And I was absolutely terrified, and the under the table was no longer a safe place for me. So this whole like hype man thing and center of attention, it's a new thing for me. But now I'm just grateful to be beyond that hurdle.
That's funny. That's interesting too. Is I can relate to that a little bit. Is I know like when I'm around a lot of the teams, they see like the wild, obnoxious me, and then if I'm hanging around, but I'm like also very introverted. Like I love to be, even my wife will come in and she'll be like, "Are you in your introverted stage?" Like, okay, like I'll just like leave you alone, right? Like everyone thinks that I'm just like game on like all the time. I'm like, no, I like to be a hermit, I promise.
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm an extrovert, but I've found ways that I absolutely have to energize
Yeah.
alone or just with myself. Like I live and breathe by my calendar these days. I'm balancing a ton right now. But it's just a matter of making sure that you can show up and show up with that high energy and high
Yep.
personality people are expecting. And I'm sure you can relate. It's hard when you're known to be that and you might be having an off day, and even just the slightest pullback from that feels like the biggest thing to them, and you're like, no, I just like need a moment. And I'm
Literally.
yeah, and so I just you take those moments as they come, but at the end of the day we're humans, and we might be hype men and we might be like trying to get 10,000 people on their feet and screaming, but like right after that happens, like I might just need to be horizontal like for a
Literally. I know this past weekend I told one of the coaches, I was like, "Am I good to go? Like, I just need to go back to the hotel. It's like 6 o'clock. Like, I just need a reset."
amen. Amen to that.
Well, that's a good segue. Is I know selfishly, like I said, is I'm interested to learn about like your journey, right? Like the whole hero's journey of transformation from where you are to how you got to this point, and how you became so involved in the sport of gymnastics, and obviously uh Loki, I guess, just like stalking you on social media, if you will, of like your enjoyment, your excitement about promoting the sport and bringing more eyeballs to it and bringing more excitement to the sport. So, yeah, let's begin there and just kind of like take me on this journey to like how we got to this point.
Yeah, thank you. I still have a lot of pinch me moments that I'm even sitting on a podcast right now talking about the journey because, man, 15 years ago, I would never have imagined that I'd be in a place where I'd have a booked out schedule for all of college season to go and just bring energy to arenas.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't compute. It doesn't essentially make sense in some respects, but I'm very grateful for the journey. So, the journey all starts, my dad was actually the head coach of the UCLA women's gymnastics team back before I was born. Then my journey as a young kid, I played pretty much every sport you can imagine. It was baseball, soccer. I ran track for a second. And then I ended up in swimming, and I was a competitive swimmer for 13 years. And then towards the end of my high school career, the passion was kind of dying out, and I would kind of plateaued in the swimming. And I knew that something else was coming. A lot of charitable things were coming my way as a even high schooler, and so I started into this unique path of doing a lot of nonprofit work and give back opportunities in high school. And then my senior year, I got the opportunity. A friend of mine was actually a walk-on at UCLA, and she wanted me to come up and watch their exhibition. It was actually they were competing in an exhibition performance against Cal State Fullerton when that was still a program. Um, and when I was getting ready to go, I told my parents where I was going, and my dad asked if he could come with me. And at the time, I didn't really know what his legacy was. I didn't grow up like going to gymnastics meets because it just wasn't a sport myself or my brother were interested in or focused on. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So he came up, and my dad had actually hired Miss Val back in the day. So they had a relationship. And then when he walked into this gym, um, the Cal State Fullerton head coach knew who he was. Miss Val knew who he was. That sparked a conversation, and ultimately, Miss Val invited me to have an opportunity to be a team manager for the UCLA women's gymnastics team that day, the first time I had interacted with UCLA, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And it's a story I will always celebrate and honor in that way. Just kind of trusting my gut, supporting a friend was ultimately what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that was the first day that I interacted with gymnastics. Um, from there, got into school, was a team manager for the team, but I knew nothing about gymnastics whatsoever. Um, I remember the first day that I was in the gym, Chris Waller asked me to throw a mat for her Tkachev, and I said, I'm really sorry. I don't know what a Tkachev is. I probably didn't even say the word correctly. I didn't know
Yeah.
what I didn't know what event that was on, and I didn't know why we were throwing mats. Like it was just so
Yeah.
aggressive. It just felt really aggressive. So ultimately, that was the moment where I felt like I had no value to contribute, and that was something that I hated. Went home that night. I was a part of the freshman class, which was Samantha Peshek, Cassidy Kozai, Sydney Sawa, and Olivia Courtney. And I asked them to go to sushi. And what I had them do is they took two chopsticks to make uneven bars, and then the other two made leg positions where I learned what all of the release moves were on bars. And they just quizzed me the entire time we were sitting at sushi. From then on, the rest of my freshman year, I watched every YouTube video I possibly could find to understand and just listen to commentators. What was skill names? What were they talking about? What events were they looking at? What were these deductions that were people were looking out for? And then basically, like Brian, I'll tell you, like it was just a matter of me slowly but surely implementing little things, asking a ton of questions,
Yeah.
staying incredibly curious, leaning into some of the highest caliber athletes in the country, which were all competing at UCLA in the 2010 to 2014 era. And I was just really grateful to be able to be surrounded by that. And I implemented moments where I could also make sure that what I was seeing was accurate. I would ask the assistant coaches just if I could tell them what I thought the correction might be on a particular routine, and if I was correct, I'd just pat myself on the back. And if I was wrong, I could listen to them give the correction, and then I'd go back and watch video to make sure that I could like understand it a little bit more. Again, all under the umbrella of value. So by the time I finished UCLA, I could see gymnastics pretty well, and people were commending me for that. At that point, people were inviting me to come and coach summer camps, and I actually helped Samantha Peshek start Beam Queen Boot Camp just as a friend. And I did the first 36 stops with her on Beam Queen Boot Camp from its inception in what she will refer to as year zero, where there were two camps that happened in Indiana and Arizona, all the way through a ten camp summer. We went to Alaska and all these things. And
Damn.
then we ended up in
Yeah.
Australia. So it was this moment in time where I was recognizing that all the work I had put in to understand the sport was turning into something that I was indeed contributing value. And it was taking me around the world in a way
Yeah.
that no one had ever really done before, and it was kind of didn't make sense. Um, so That's kind of the gymnastics piece of it all. I will say from that point forward, there's a lot of nuanced pieces of how I've dove into more of the fan engagement and the marketing side of things. And we can get into that in this conversation, but ultimately, UCLA Gymnastics was where it all began. And this was just like a kid who wanted to contribute some value, was feeling immense imposter syndrome the entire time in a space I had no business being in, but finding spaces to contribute value. And I found that value in being able to bring my best forward every single day in the gym. And that was bringing my personality, that was bringing um, just my enthusiasm, that was
Yep.
bringing my support for my teammates, that was bringing my ability to be a great liaison between leadership and the coaching staff and the team that really trusted me, kind of like a big brother of sorts.
Right.
And I was just doing what felt right in my gut all the way through. And that's kind of what's led me to where I am now.
So when you were at that point in that juncture, did you A, consider, and then B, did you get involved in or not get involved in, and why or why not? Like, was coaching route in like top of mind, right? Like as you're starting to travel and as you're starting to like do Beam Queen and stuff like that, was it like, oh, like maybe I want to be a coach, and what does that look like? Do I want to get in the club world? Do I want to get in the college world? Did you ever, I guess, flirt with that idea, so to speak?
I never have. I never have.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, it's been the greatest challenge because it's probably I'm not going to call it the easiest path because I think coaches are some incredible students of the sport and are doing some amazing things. It would have been an easier path than the route that I've taken, because the route that I've taken is incredibly creative,
Yep.
and it also I tend to use the word pioneer. It's very hard to pioneer something that's never been done before, but basically what I'll tell you is that I took the culmination of all of the experiences that I had as an undergrad student and team manager at UCLA, and I started to put all of those pieces together of how we could start to grow the sport in a unique
Hmm.
way, how we could contribute this information, this valuable information I was able to collect from one demographic, Los Angeles, and be able to impact more markets around the country. Um, so I knew that the creativity was not going to be a lucrative financial path. I knew it was not going to be easy. I knew I was going to have to convince a lot of people that it was
Yep.
valuable. But at the end of the day, I just knew that the non-coaching path was going to give me incredible access and incredible permission to impact more spaces. And that's what has always been my driving force in everything I'm doing, is to impact as many people and as many spaces as I possibly can.
So, well, one, I mean, essentially, you are like a lot of people like to say, like one of one. You're kind of one of zero, right? Like in what you're doing. Like, so pioneer plus, you're kind of the only person like out there, like promoting it in the way that you're promoting it, right? And using your word like pioneer. So while you were like, what was the moment, I guess, or what was that period of time like when you started to realize like, hey, I have a creative brain. I have the ability to use my imagination to promote these things. Obviously, looking at like what Sam Pejic does with like Beam Queen of like bringing hype and bringing enthusiasm and getting people involved. Was it being around something like that and what she was building and like, oh, like I have something here. I have an enthusiasm to go do this, but do this in my own way. Is that kind of the aha moment, the juncture? Like what was that like?
I wish it was as smooth as what you're describing. There was about a 5.5 year gap from the moment I graduated UCLA to the moment I decided to actually go further into this space. Um, in that 5.5 years, what happened? Yeah, part of it was working Beam Queen and helping her as a friend just to help her business.
Right.
Um, and that kept me in the sport. I was also starting to work like gold medal gymnastics. I've worked Amanda Borden's camp for many, many years now. And so there were other camps that were keeping me involved. But in
Yep.
that time, my career was actually in nonprofit. So I worked for
Mm.
a childhood cancer charity in Southern California. And my job was to bring joy and encouragement to kids fighting cancer and their families. And I went into 186 children's hospitals over the course of
Dang.
5.5 years to go and encourage these kids to never, ever give up.
Yep.
What I was doing, though, was that has helped where I'm at now is my job while I did those visits was to cultivate a team of professional athletes, Olympians, and celebrities to be really special people to create very special experiences for kids fighting cancer. And what I did was I created this crew of people that I was traveling around the country with and going to professional sport facilities, college sports facilities, engaging with marketing staff, social media staffs, videographers, photographers to capture memories for these families in the trenches of cancer and be able to do it in a way that didn't put kids fighting cancer as, the cover page, like
Yeah.
let's put like fishbowl mentality, right? It wasn't putting them on blast in any way like that. It was incredibly authentic and genuine and making sure that that was the core of what we were doing. So in those 5.5 years, I networked a ton and I networked in other sports spaces. And that ultimately, 5.5 years later, that would have put me at like, well, I guess 2020, 2020, 2019, 2020 was kind of the beginning of me shifting to the a sole gymnastics career. Um, that was when I started to really implement a lot of these pieces of like, okay, creatively, I see what the professional sport landscape looks like. I
Yep.
can see that gymnastics, although it doesn't have a professional sport entity, we can start to create models, camps, clinics, gyms, experiences in both the college world and the developmental program world to be able to mimic that of programs of sports in our world that
Right.
do have a ton of fan engagement, that do have a lot of support, that do have sponsorship dollars coming in their direction. And we have that model. It just doesn't look like flips and rhinestone leotards. So
Right.
that was what I was doing in that time. And although I said it earlier, I trust my gut in a lot of what I'm doing. It didn't look very linear in terms of this is going to contribute to this point A to point B. What it was a very zigzagged, swirly, twirly, whatever path to get from saying yes to some experience to then be able to use that experience to then impact what I'm doing now. And I feel that and see that every single day.
Yeah. So at that point of like 2019, 2020, when as you're like making this transition, what was your, I don't know, for like lack of better words, like what was your first reach out, right? What was the like, okay, hey, I'm gonna go do this. All right, let me go reach out to Susie or Billy about like, hey, I can create a different experience at your camp, or was it reaching out to a college program of like, hey, let's bring a certain level of enthusiasm and excitement? Like, I have this model, right? It's principle based, right? It's like if I follow these principles, I'm going to get this over here. We can change the strategy all the time, but like there are certain principles that like, I mean, it's kind of the definition of principle. It's like it's just not going to change,
Mhm.
right? And so as you began that journey, it's like where did you start reaching out? What did that kind of vision look like in the beginning for you?
So the first offer that I was given, because I wouldn't say that it was something that was on my radar, but it
Yeah.
was offered to me, was when Jordan Weber got the head coaching position at the University of Arkansas. We had been the best of friends, and we still are to this day the best of friends. Um, but when she got on campus at Arkansas, she had a lot to learn as a
Mm-hmm.
first-time head coach.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing she wanted to outsource was as they say, outsource the things that like are not as important or because it's definitely not an incompetency of Jordan Weaver, let me tell you. But she outsourced marketing and she asked me to come and bring some of the information and the knowledge that we had experienced together at UCLA over to the Fayetteville, Arkansas market and be able to be a consultant with the University of Arkansas marketing department to be able to contribute some of those learnings in Fayetteville. So it started out as a marketing consultant behind the scenes, and through all of that, Jordan had the idea of creating this hype man role and make me the official Arkansas Razorback hype man for the gymnastics program. Um, and that's really where all of this started.
Interesting. So did you always have like an interest in marketing?
So I have a psychology degree from UCLA.
Yeah.
And when I graduated UCLA, I just said I wanted to do anything that could impact people. And I have done that in my career. Started out in charitable work, got
Uh-huh.
really excited. It got really passionate about actually leaning into the medical side of cancer and understanding that because I knew it was going to make it more valuable when I'm standing with a mom who is naming all of these scary words, vocabularies in the world of cancer that most people kind of just write her off because they don't understand her. I wanted to understand so I could be a good listener, right?
Yeah.
That people, the business of people is what I knew my psychology degree was always going to be in. And what I would say is that like I've always been fascinated by sport and the way that sport brings people together.
Yep.
And I feel the same way about actually musical theater. And so I'm a sport hobbyist, I'm a musical theater hobbyist. I don't do it myself, but all of these things have always just had this fascination in my head and my heart that I knew that we could implement a lot of these things to bring people together, to create fan loyalty, to create different experiences based on unique demographics of people, knowing that the LA market is going to be very different than
Yeah.
the Fayetteville, Arkansas
Fayetteville.
market.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what I love. I tell this to people all the time. Like, we cannot create marketing in a vacuum and say that what is going to work in LA is going to work in Fayetteville, is going to work in UW Eau Claire up in Wisconsin. It's not the way it works. But that's my very favorite thing about what I do is that's where things get challenging. And that's when diving into those demographics, understanding the market of people. What are your challenges? What does your student demographic look like? What does your season ticket holder demographic look like?
Yep.
Dive into all of that so that we can figure out what the right marketing plays are here. And but we can absolutely pull and modify and model based on things that we have seen work in other sports, in other markets, and from coaches in the past as well, I think have all been things that we've been able to pull the trigger on.
Yeah. That's interesting too, is I love your choice of wording because even like when I talk to the athletes too, is I feel like too often what I say is there's a difference in copying and pasting and modeling, right? And I feel like oftentimes whether you're talking about marketing or whether you're talking about like athlete performance, they're like, "Oh, like I really like the way that she performs," and tries to copy and paste. I'm like, "But you're not her." Right? Like there are things that you can model after and put into your identity and into your personality. Very much what it sounds like in the marketing world is like we can't just copy and paste what they're doing, right? Because it just won't work. But we can model because there are different demographics, there are different characteristics of this program or this city identity, right? That's kind of my jam, so to speak. But that's interesting that you've become a master modeler.
Yeah, you know what? You bring up a really interesting point. I'm sitting here like, wow, like we are very much very similar and have a very similar headspace on this particular topic. I was I've been really convicted over the last 3 years or so that I don't actually think that any of us really create anything. I think that
Mm,
I think that we all are a sum of our experiences and we use what others have created, which they also probably didn't create that. It was a history of experiences that led to us experiencing a moment. Then we take those moments we experience and we adapt them, we model them to do what works and what fits for us. Um, I could rattle off so many different ideas that worked for us in the 2010 to 2014 timeframe of UCLA gymnastics when we were selling out Poly Pavilion with viral floor routines and all of the things. Those experiences are not verbatim the cookie cutter what's happening of what we're doing in Fayetteville. but they were absolutely things that I was able to sit back when I was being asked to figure out what was going to work for that market. I was able to go back to being in that environment and going back to feel that experience and say, how can we make this experience feel make a fan feel that feeling,
Yep.
but make it uniquely and incredibly Arkansas. And that's exactly what I do now when I work for the Big Ten or I work for the NCAA or I'm working for Elevate the Stage this season or whatever it may be. And I talk to a lot of head coaches of a lot of different programs about this very thing all the time. I'm like, you guys experience 10 different meets every single year that don't happen in your arena. Keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Watch what happens. Look at what's working. Just because it's working for one crew is not going to work for another. I talked to one university recently and I said, "What's your student population look like?" And they're like, "We have 0 students that come to our meets." And I'm like, "That's fine. Look at the marketing
Mm,
activations for a school that they are finding students and at least try your best to like implement some of those to see if your 0 number can turn into 10. Can that
yep.
10 number turn into 20? And eventually, who knows? You might not ever find students there, but it
Yeah.
also could have the opportunity of being a sold out student section at 3,000 people because that's what we're experiencing now at Arkansas, and it's so fun.
That's interesting you say that because when you first say it, like when you first mentioned it, like I feel like we don't create anything. I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then I was like, wait, that was literally me. Like when I first got into the space of working with college gym programs is at the beginning, you talk about like imposter syndrome is I had all these like mentors and people that had like mentored me and learning through going through events and reading books or listening to podcasts. And so at the beginning is I felt like an imposter because I was like, well, I can't just like say like what they're saying. And then I was like, but yes, you can just put your personality on it, put your stories and put your analogies on it. But because, like you said, it's like they didn't invent that, right? Like they probably learned it from somebody, especially in like the personal development space, right? It goes like Napoleon Hill, right? Like it goes way, way, way back,
Right.
right? They're Jim Rohn, like all these people that they were learning from. It's like, yes, don't just regurgitate exactly what they're saying, but understand from a principle level of like what they're saying and then like build it around your framework and build it around your structure and build it around your personality. But it definitely took me like a year or so because I was like, I hope they don't read that book or hope they don't listen to that. But I was like, actually, I hope that they do because
Yeah.
now that they'll like actually understand. And now it's funny, like some of the girls will text me after they graduate. They'll pick up a book and be like, yo, this is saying the same thing you told me for 3 years. I'm like, I know because I didn't make it up.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm the first to ensure that credit is given where credit is due.
Mm,
This has to do with the fact that I lived in that imposter syndrome for such a long time that I was just trying to like all I really knew how to do was like to like deflect a little bit and not put the like camera on me in that
right.
sense, right? I was incredibly grateful for the history and the experiences that I got to have when I was a student athlete at UCLA. I was in like we were able to host a national championship at UCLA while I was there. I was able to experience different markets. I competed at a national championship in Duluth, Georgia, Birmingham, Alabama, and the non-home field of Cleveland, which turned into Kent State making the top 12 and they actually made that year, which was iconic. But, I was able to take on these experiences, but every single experience was just the best thing ever. Um, so I don't know. It's making sure that you can identify those pieces. It's making sure that you can put credit where credit is due. Know who came before you and be able to make sure that, you know, crediting them is something that I think is a human feeling that feels good, right? If I knew that I had done something that felt like it had been done for the first time, it would feel good to know that someone else is replicating it, is
Right.
duplicating it, right? My actual full-time job, I work for Pacific Range Gymnastics and I do all of their graphics and I do marketing communications for them up here in Seattle, Washington. My very favorite thing is seeing gyms who copycat my graphics and try to recreate it. Like, I'm not mad. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? Like, my purpose in what I'm doing is I'm trying to make our sport and the canvas I have is Pacific Rain right now to elevate our athletes there to feel like professional athletes. One of those things is adopting what we see happen in college right now, which is our professional sport model of our sport. They're getting game day graphics, they're getting accomplishment graphics, they're getting high level photography, they're doing photo shoots, they're doing all these things. So we do those things with all of our student athletes. But now, over the past 2.5 years working for Pacific Rain, I now see teams that are literally, if I have a little subtext line on the bottom of my graphic with like spaced out lettering in a certain color, and all of a sudden I see the same thing done, I'm like, awesome. Like, I'm glad that I was able to take a load off of you of the actual like conceptualization of what this could
Yep.
be, because that athlete that's on that graphic feels incredible that she gets to have that moment. So I celebrate those moments and I think that if we continue this ripple effect of more people modeling what they've seen and adapting it to what they're doing, we're only just gonna be able to, you know, what's that saying? The raise all tide boats, whatever the
Yeah. I know what you're saying. The tide raise the right the tide the yes, I know what you're saying.
yeah, that one.
Hopefully everybody else does too. You know what we're talking about. The tide rises and all the boats do too. Something along those lines.
Right.
One of the things I want to go back to too, because I feel like this is something that I preach a lot to the athletes too. And it sounds like whether it was consciously or subconsciously done by you, like you did sounds like a magnificent job of this is, well, a couple things that I'm like, if I could give you one thing, this is one of those things that would be at the top of the list for athletes. I relate it to like athlete performance, but obviously also it carries over into life and career too, is the concept of curiosity, right? Like I'm always like, if you're not certain, you better be curious, right? And if you don't feel absolutely certain about something, you better start asking questions. I don't care if you're not certain on what time to be somewhere, right? It's like just be like, hey, I just want to double check, right? I'm not certain. I get curious. And it's interesting to hear kind of like your journey is like there was this constant craving of like curiosity along the way that I, in the whatever 20, 30 minutes that we've talked so far is that's been like kind of a staple of what's allowed you to get to this point because you've just stayed curious. You just stayed asking questions and showed up in different spaces, different environments, different people in order to understand things. And I think that that's like a lost art that most people feel like they have to have all the answers versus being curious. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit too, just like how that's played a role. Cause that's like that's such a huge piece that I wish 19, 20, 21 year olds like would understand just in any aspect of life.
I have to say, like, thank you for saying, putting words to a feeling that I've had for such a long time. This is a two-part story, and I apologize. I'll condense it as much as I can. And I'm also going to put a disclaimer on this. This is not a story about being like, this is a total humble brag story, and I don't intend on it being a
Totally,
brag.
totally.
The first part of the story, or the first thing I want to say about curiosity is that every single day I'm actually looking at my external monitor I have connected to my computer, and I have a post-it note right there, and I have three words that drive everything that I do every single day, and it's desire, will, and curiosity.
Mm,
Um, to me, those three things motivate everything that I do. You know, if you don't have desire, you're definitely running at something from a really rocky foundation.
yep.
Because you got to believe, you have to actually know that what you're chasing is possible until you get that big stop sign in front of your face that says, hey, U-turn, go back and regroup, or stop entirely. So don't let anything get in the way of your own personal desire. The will, you got to wake up, you got to put in the work, you got to make it happen. And curiosity, I don't know a lot. I don't know a
Yeah.
lot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself in situations, ask a ton of questions, make myself really uncomfortable in order to get more knowledge. I'm not gonna be the expert after I ask the question, but it's a summary, it's a sum of all of these experiences that contributes to that. That's the post-it note was one thing I needed to mention. The humble brag is I got the opportunity to meet Kobe Bryant. And
So jealous. Before we even go, so jealous. That's so dope.
yeah, so it's a really cool story. I've actually never shared it publicly. Um, so Nastia Lukin created an app that was in inspiring and motivating young gymnasts with mentors that were influential mentors. It was called Grander. Um, One of the investors that she had in Grander was Kobe Bryant, was Kobe and Vanessa, and Kobe encouraged Nastia to go out on the road into a couple different locations and do on the ground inspirational sessions at club gymnastics meets. One of the things Kobe said was he thought that it would have been good to find someone who did not do gymnastics but could highly motivate and encourage and set the tone for those moments, those keynote speech kind of moments that Nastia could give. And Nastia told Kobe about me, unbeknownst to me, and ultimately Nas Kobe didn't know who I was, and I ended up going to do those be the in that role for Nastia and Grander. And about 2 years later, when I was working for the charity, the childhood cancer charity, Kobe and Gigi, alongside of Gigi's women's basketball team that Kobe was coaching at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
um, came to our charity. And it was not created by me. That opportunity was not created by me at all, and they showed up and I was there. And so I introduced myself to Kobe and I said, "Hey, I'm Cory, and I'm just going to connect some dots for you." Um, I actually was the one that went out on the road and spoke with Nastia on Grander, and his eyes lit up and he was like, "I've heard a lot about you. Like, it's so great to finally meet you." Where this goes to curiosity is that in that moment, I had this feeling that I don't know if I'm ever going to get the chance to meet someone like Kobe Bryant, who has a history of experiences, a history of success. I just always, when I think about Kobe, I think about the story, the quote somewhere that talks about, you know, waking up early and spending extra time in the gym, putting in the time on the free throw line, all of those sort of things. Um, and he even has quotes back in that day relating it to like the 96 Olympic gymnastics team. And there was just some sort of like tie and like connection point there. I was able to spend about 35 minutes talking to Kobe.
Yeah.
But what I chose to talk to him about was the fact that at that moment in time in his life, he was dedicating, he chose that his desire and his will were going in the direction of trying to figure out, those are his words, how to be a great women's basketball coach. He was
Mm.
coaching Gigi's team, and he knew he did not know how to coach a women's basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of skills. He has a lot of great things that he can do to like throw a basketball, to run a court, all the things as a player. But he was stepping into a new space that he knew he was going to have to take what his experiences were, but also get really curious and figuring out how to do.
Mm.
And the quote he left me with is he says, "Cory, stay curious. Whatever you're leaning into, know that you're not the expert and there are people who know more than you, and continue to ask incredible questions. Because when you ask the questions, that's when you're going to be able to create something that has never been done before, pioneer a path, impact people's lives in the way people have never been impacted before. That's when that creation comes. It's going to be a culmination of all of your curious moments that then become uniquely something that comes out of your mouth and out of your experiences and impacting their life individually. So that's my that's my run on this whole curiosity
Yeah.
topic. but I'm gonna give credit to Kobe on that one because it definitely inspires me every single day.
Damn. I'm like mind blown, like at the minute or at the moment, because it's like I do think so many of us, just as like human beings, is we do something for so long. I think that we just label ourselves the expert, and then that's when kind of like learning stops. I mean, it's a little bit of like my, I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole, but a little bit of like my annoyance with college, like just education in and of itself, because I think so many people, it's like, okay, like I reached this point. I'm, 21, 22. Thank God I got through that hurdle of education. And then they stop learning at 22, 23, and then they just try to grind their way through, I guess, life without continuing any kind of like education. And I think the most fascinating part, like for me with that story too, is because um in the past, like when I've spoken at like some of the like gymnastics, like summer camps and stuff like that for like colleges, is one of the topics that I do bring up is curiosity. And I'm like, what if you were on the elevator? You got a minute or two. I was like, you should always have like a very powerful question, in your back pocket because you never know who you're going to run into. And it's like you can waste the question on in that, scenario with somebody like Kobe of like, what's it like to play in the Staples Center, right? Like some just kind of meaningless question that's probably not going to help you out internally versus do you have some questions in your back pocket that will really help you personally like move the needle forward in your life? And I think that that's fascinating that it's like you recognize in that moment is like I can be starstruck, right? And talk to him about like, oh, you're Kobe Bryant, right? Like in those things. Or it's like, I have this ability to sit down with somebody that has been highly successful at their thing and help understand what it is that they did to be able to get there and what it is that they're doing now to continue to grow. That's the people underestimate of just like who you're going to bump into, right? Like, and using those moments to actually serve you versus kind of a meaningless moment versus like, oh, let me get the picture, right? Let me get the autograph. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's amazing. But like that autograph's going to sit on your desk and it's not going to help you move the needle forward in your life.
Yeah. Let me tell you, this is what I'll say. If there's any student athletes listening, I want you guys to know that I got the picture,
Yeah.
right? I finished that conversation and we did take a picture. And in fact, after the picture was taken, he also followed me on Instagram.
That's kind of dope. Now I'm just real jealous.
He was, well, and the crux of what I'm trying to say here is that when you have that authentic, genuine,
Mm, mm,
like conversation that doesn't look or act like starstruck, doesn't look or
yep.
act like celebrity, but you have genuinely observed someone's life and gone, wow, wow. This is what I want to lean into and learn from this person if they're willing to have this conversation. And in that moment, I did ask that question, and he was willing to have that conversation. And what it turned into was an authentic connection that we made that it wasn't scary to ask for the picture. And
Yeah.
and ultimately, he wanted to continue to follow along my journey and path because of our that experience
Yeah.
we had together. So the message to student athletes is continue to lean into exploring, understanding, learning, stay curious about everyone's story. You never know who you're going to interact with, especially if it's your hero. Just know that when you bring your most authentic, genuine self forward in those moments, that's what's going to help you win. When you have those people in your corner, that's what's going to help you succeed in the future. The picture can only go so far.
Right.
It's going to get you some likes, might get you a couple followers, but ultimately, if that's what you're in it for, that's not what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of learning and building authentic and genuine relationship with people.
Well, and again, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, is like maybe because of like your psych degree too, is like understanding human behavior. And it's like when people feel understood is like that's when there's a connection built. And when you don't stand out from the how many millions of people have come up to him and asked him a basketball question, right? It's kind of like, all right, yeah, it is, right? It's like there's not a whole lot of connection. But when you ask questions that build a relationship, understanding human behavior, that they feel seen, understood, right? And it's like then all of a sudden you do have a connection to where it's like, oh, like I would consider this person like a friend, so to speak, because they're not a fan. As I remember my very first internship, I came from like the strength and conditioning space. And I interned down at IMG Academies in Bradenton, Florida. And at the time, it was right after Cam Newton had gotten drafted first overall, and so that facility became like a very popular place for people to like players to train for like draft prep and stuff like that. And so I'll never forget again, right? I'm right out of college, right? I'm 22, 23 years old. And there was, when I first went down there, there was, I think it was like 54 guys training for the NFL draft. And I'll never forget people asking me, like, in the gym, they're like, how do you know what to talk about with them? And I was like, they're just humans, right? Like they just want to have conversations. Like they don't really want to talk about football, so to speak. It's like it may lead to that, but if you treat them like a human and you just have human interaction with them, it's like they're naturally going to be drawn to you. And it's like I didn't really grasp it at the time, but I knew I was like, well, they probably don't want to talk about sports, right?
Right. They
Like
don't. It's there every single day. It's there every moment. Like they're probably watching the same thing you are on Netflix.
literally.
They probably want that, like we talked about earlier, this extrovert introvert, how they re-energize. Sometimes the greatest gift to someone like that is to not talk about sports so that they can just decompress and they can come back into their body and back into their heart a little bit more, that they don't have to be feeling that pressure all the time, that drive, that motivation. When you stay that high for that long, my goodness, that's exhaustion, right? You have to be able to come down and talk. Did you see that play in the game yesterday, like of a different sport than what they're talking about? You know, did you see who got voted off of The Bachelor yesterday? Like this, that was crazy. Like you just never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, yeah, that's wild. That's wild. All right, shifting gears slightly is let's talk about gymnastics exposure in terms of the sport and eyeballs and marketing it is, that I think that's what originally led me to like reaching out to you and kind of like what you're doing and like again just building excitement around the sport. I guess kind of a place to start is as you've been in this space for, 4 or 5 years, 6 years or so, is what were some of the gaps that you saw in terms of bringing exposure and bringing excitement? And then what are still some of the gaps to close on on the sport, right? Is, obviously NCAA women's gymnastics is gaining momentum in terms, especially like in viewership. I think this past NCAA championships was probably the most viewed, if not one of the most viewed. Um, but also at the same time, some of the club meets and some of the higher, like more popular ones, like classics and things like that, aren't being seen as much. And so just curious of like your perspective on those things and what we can do to continue to keep that momentum, just like the NCAA has, but all across the sport, so to speak.
Oof, here we go.
Here we go.
I'll speak to your question first about what gaps did I see initially. Um, you know, the number one thing that comes to my mind and what comes to most people's mind is this concept that our sport is very visible when the Olympics are here.
Right.
People believe that gymnastics happens, but it's with five women every 4 years. That's their picture of gymnastics. What I'm incredibly passionate about and what I tell people all the time if they'll listen to me is that we have 86 markets around the country right now that you can go and
Mm,
watch gymnastics 5 times a year and go and bring your kids, bring your friends. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours of jam-packed with high-flying skills and amazing, awe-inspiring just routines from two incredibly competitive teams. There are 86 markets around the country that you can go and experience what you could have experienced in an Olympic world, but you chose to watch that on your TV and you can go and experience this in person.
Yeah.
That's a gap I'm trying my best to make sure it has a ton of awareness. It's the concept that it exists. It's the concept that it's nearby, most likely. It's the concept that if you experience it once, you will likely want to go again.
Yeah.
Um, it's experiencing that you might go as, someone's brother, or you might go as someone's friend, and then you'll want to go back, and you're going to end up bringing more people when you go back because you told them about what your experience was, and then they go and turn up again. Um, that's that's the first gap that I saw a while back was we can't just ride on the coattails of a Simone Biles or an Ali Raisman. We can't. We should. We let me rephrase. We shouldn't only rely on the coat to
Yeah.
riding the coattails of those influential individuals. What we should do is capitalize on that exposure to our sport and adapt it to what's experiencing what our experiences that people can have every single year through gymnastic season from January to April. Um, that's what I saw. We're still trudging along to fill those gaps and to make sure that people are communicated well. But what I'll say to answer the latter half of your question is personally, I am incredibly passionate about grassroots marketing. It is definitely not the way that most people would go about what we're trying to do here. But I have never posted a Facebook ad. I have never done paid marketing in any of that sense. What I believe in is building genuine relationship with people and getting them excited about something that excites me. And so far, it's working. So I'll say this, 7 seasons ago, I started working with the University of Arkansas. Well, this will be my seventh season with them. When we first stepped foot onto campus at Arkansas, they had an average attendance of 2,700 people going to their events, and now we're at an average attendance of over 11,000 people
Oh
attending
shit. Yeah.
Arkansas meets throughout the season. We were forced essentially because of the demand to move from a smaller arena that we were selling out at 7,000 people, that now we're in the what will be the largest competitive gymnastics arena in college gymnastics in Bud Walton Arena, which seats over 19,000 people. So no other college team competes in an arena of that size. We are not filling it. We would love to. We are not filling it, but it excites us and gives us room to grow in every
Yeah.
single week, and allows us the opportunity to go out into the community, do the grassroots marketing, where I can tell the person, my Starbucks barista, hey, you should come to the gymnastics meet this weekend. I can tell the sorority girl when I'm going to do in-person, sorority cookie drops throughout the week before a meet, tell them, hey, invite your family to drive from an hour out of town. We have room. We'd love to have them here. It's it's the ability for growth is really important and exciting, but it does get really tiring. Um,
Yeah.
so so that's the Arkansas side of it that I will say that we've seen the growth working. And then from a larger scale perspective, like the things that I've started to do for the Big Ten and the NCAA, and we're working on about to roll out this from a greater 85 market standpoint, is when I do the Big Ten championship as the hype man and MC, I'm also a marketing consultant for the Big Ten to promote the meet. One of the things that has worked and been exciting for me is I actually go to the director of operations of each of the programs, and I ask them for 5 to 7 uh, of the local sports bars and grills or local restaurants that have TVs that show sports in the local demographic of the team that's competing. What we're doing with this is I am reaching out to these places, asking them to put the Big Ten Network at the certain time that their team is going to be competing on their TVs. And then we promote on social media alongside of the team itself that fans from the local area that cannot fly to the place where the championship is happening can go and experience being a fan around that team for that particular championship meet and being fan loyal, like the fan loyalty, the fanfare, the experience, all of those sort of things. And I was able to get lots and lots and lots of restaurants from all 12 teams to show the the meet last year. I did the
Yeah.
same thing with NCAAs. A lot of this happens like very much behind the scenes, but it's just to create those experiences for fans that we can have an experience that doesn't just look like get on a plane, fly to Fort Worth,
Mm.
come pay for the ticket, all of this experience. Instead, you can be a fan of UCLA gymnastics and you can go down to Rocco's in Westwood and they have it on their TVs and you can show up with other fans that are in UCLA gymnastics here and high five when you see a stuck dismount and celebrate after an amazing rotation and then cry a little bit when you just missed winning the national championship by one place. Like you can, that experience of bringing people together carries on because you're going to
Yeah.
want that experience again and again and again. So grassroots, that's just one example of something that I've been doing. But I just believe in continuing to fill the gaps the best that we can, one person at a time, one space at a time, one demographic at a time. And I say that all while I try my best to not just treat it one at a time, but really get all of them on board to make it all happen at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, even like I'll give an example, like for the past, I guess this is my fifth year being around like TWU. And, with Texas being such a popular gymnastics state in the sense of so many big name clubs, right? That are not far from a campus like that to how to close that gap to, we're not talking a huge arena, right? But to pack it out for probably $5, $10,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
next to nothing. And a
yeah.
team that competes against Oklahoma every year, right? A team that has had in my years there has had like LSU there. It's like they're competing against, premier teams too, right? Like it's not like a team that they've never heard of, so to speak, right? But yeah, I've just been very fascinated on how to help them, right? Like, because I like it is. It's like I think that, and it's like part of that too is, oh, well, that's just like a D2 program, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, have you seen a meet? Have you gone?
Right,
I think you'll
right.
be pleasantly surprised at the quality of athletes and competition and routines that are sitting 10 minutes from your house for $5 or $10, right? It just blows my mind.
These athletes are doing things that a very, very, very small percentage of people on this planet can do.
Yeah. I know it's funny is we were out there and we were shooting some behind the scenes stuff with a buddy and he's just being really introduced to the sport in terms of like understanding it before we went out there and he was just like, dude, I think it would be so cool. It's like on camera if we got like some of the girls to like teach you stuff that they're doing. And I was like, no, no, I will not be doing that. That is a hard no.
Exactly. I mean, welcome to my world. It's like it's so cool if you could like do a back tuck after you like get everyone on their feet. And I'm like, it would be so cool, but like I don't want to. I don't I don't think I need to.
I'd rather not die in
Right.
public.
Right. I nearly pass out from the adrenaline rush of trying to get fans on their feet. Like that's a true story. Like I have had moments where I get a little bit,
Oh, I
whoa,
believe it. Yeah.
screaming so hard. We don't need to cap it off with a back tuck.
So speaking of that is when you first got into like hype man world is how did you, for lack of better terms, kind of create that character, so to speak, right? Create this is like, okay, I'm gonna need to be like this. I'm gonna need to bring this certain level of energy. Yeah, because that's it, I mean, it's different than like announcing, right? It's different than, talking, commentating the sport, so to speak. So how did you go about sitting down and being like, all right, what's this going to look like when I walk into the arena the first time?
Yeah, well, this goes back to talking about gaps. To me, a gap that we have in our sport is educating people on the sport itself. Um,
Mm,
different than different than many other sports, like when a foul happens and the whistle blows, the play stops and people know that like they either agree or they disagree with the foul. In our sport, when a score gets flashed, fans are like, I don't get it. It looked like the best thing I've ever seen in
right.
my life,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's part of what I knew was my job was to educate fans on permission to celebrate and permission to get excited about a vast array of things, but just to give them permission to be a part of the experience. Um, at the end of the day, a fan doesn't really need to know what the deductions are. That's not contributing to why they show up to that meet and contribute to the overall experience to have a great time themselves. They don't need to know that
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't that the connection bonus didn't happen, so then the start value went down, and then because then the moment you explain that, they're like, I have no idea what you just said. Not
Yeah.
worth it. So education was the first part of
Mm.
knowing that I needed to basically be a figurehead, a mascot of sorts in the arena. And on the microphone, one of the first things I ever said, the first meet in Arkansas, was I said, if you have no idea what to do, just copy me. And so that's what I did. The entire first meet, I was jumping, I was clapping, I was pointing, I was I was trying to draw people's attention to different parts of the arena to guide the viewer, to guide the
Mm.
audience experience of where they should be putting their eyes, right? It's to you and I who have been to many gymnastics meets, it's obvious in a dual meet fashion, we go vault bars, vault bars, vault bars, vault bars 6 times, but then all of a sudden an exhibition routine happens and everyone's like, why is there a seventh person going? Are they contributing to the team score? And while I'm not going to explain that beforehand, right afterwards, I can say, hey, that was an exhibition performance, and this is the
Mm.
first time she's been on bars this season. Let's give her one big round of applause because it deserves to be celebrated, right?
Right.
So I'm educating them in that way. It's a gymnastics 101 constantly throughout the season to make sure that I know that there are fans who have never experienced a gymnastics meet there before. So education was one side. The other side was just energy and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I recognized that standing in front of the student section, in front of floor, during floor, was a focal point that then what it did was it created a tradition at Arkansas that during every floor routine, all of the audience stands up and they clap along with the routine the entire time. That didn't happen before until I got the whole student section to copy me because they're oblivious and didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
They were just copying the hype man guy with the jersey on. And then standing down at the bottom, I was doing the clapping and the jumping. And then by the time year 5 rolled around, I started giving them a couple things of choreography to do. Last year, we had some like call and repeat stuff happening with one of our athletes that they were starting to pick up on it and they were a part of the experience in unique ways because they got educated on all of it. So um, it's been a culmination of understanding demographic, educating the sport, and making sure that we can do things that are unique to the demographic and to the program, to the organization. Uh,
Yeah.
what looks iconically Arkansas, what holds on to tradition of Arkansas sport and athletics, while simultaneously pushing those boundaries, knowing that there's no other sport on campus that does what happens in a gymnastics meet.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. The education piece definitely makes sense, right? Like just helping them like understand. Cause I even think like wrestling's my background and people will be like, I would go, but like I don't know what's going on. I'm like, it's super simple. It's not as
Yeah,
complicated as you think. I was like, there's 4 ways to score points. That's all you need to know. From a basic level, that's all you need to know. You don't need to know all the ins and outs of the technique and like whatever what that shot was called or what that takedown was called and how they do it. It's like, here's how you score points. There's 4 ways. That's it. Like just go and celebrate this piece of it.
yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm one of those people. I don't know a ton about wrestling. But what I tell people all the time is that if you gave me an opportunity to attend any sporting event ever, it could be badminton, it could be wrestling, it could be equestrian for all I care. I will say yes because I want to experience those environments. Because to me, all of those environments contribute to
Mm,
how we can model what we can
mm.
do to attract more fans to every sport. I was sitting at the Seahawks game, the Seattle Seahawks game, and I like was looking at my friend who I was sitting with, and I was like, I'm not really watching the football right now. Like I'm noticing the sponsors that are on the runner boards. I'm looking at what lighting effects that they're putting in the 300 level to like create still this on-brand blue and green vibe. I'm looking at the halftime show. Who are they activating in this way? I'm looking at this from a total fan experience perspective.
Yeah.
I am watching the game and I'm celebrating touchdowns and all of these awesome things. But ultimately, absorbing all of those experiences is the way that we're going to be able to elevate our own sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I love. All right. Couple more questions.
Yeah.
One is because I think this is relevant for especially like student athletes or just athletes, probably people in general at some level. But I I believe that people's greatest fear is fear of being judged, right? Like a lot of people, I'll ask athletes, I'm like, oh, what's your biggest fear? They're like, fear of failure. I'm like, not really, because if you fell and no one was in the arena, you wouldn't care, right? Like you play the video game, you die on the level, you just play the level again, right? Like, and so my question to you is what you do, right? Like you're putting yourself out there, right? Like you're showing a personality and the vast majority love it, right? But I'm sure there's a couple like, oh my God, like this guy, like whatever. Um, because I think that that's any performer, any speaker, anybody that gets on stage, like there's always going to be at least the one, right? Like in the crowd, whatever. So how have you, or was that just never a thing of going out in front of in the beginning 3,000, then 5,000, then 10,000 or 20,000 people and just alleviate yourself of like, yo, like it's time to be me and push anything else in terms of like what people would say, how I'm perceived, or the judgment that may come along with it. I think that's like super relevant for this conversation.
Let me just remind you that I was the kid who hid under the table and didn't want
Right,
to be
right.
the center of attention. So you asking if it's always been easy for me? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Um, the answer to this question is actually quite simple. I don't do what I do for me.
Mm,
I do what I do in order to create unforgettable experiences for the student athletes to carry with themselves for the rest of their life. That's it.
yeah,
If I can make a student athlete smile, if I can get them to dance, if I can, a high five just makes their day, that's what it's all about. If me doing something silly makes them laugh, great, I'm on board. And I feel similarly about fans.
yeah,
I spend my, when you, if you saw my like run of show from what I do in a gymnastics meet, this is not things that is external for the marketing person. It's not for the PA announcer. No one knows that these things are happening. But I intentionally write into my own schedule, go outside and say hi to all of the fans that are standing in line in the cold, waiting to get in before the doors open. I write in that schedule like I oftentimes go and buy extra like fun random things like pom-poms or light up sticks or whatever that if I see like a little kid who is just having the time of their life and I can make it even better, I'll go and grab one of those things that I've purchased and go and give it to them because then the hype man guy came over and gave me a pom-pom and they're just gonna have even more fun, right?
yeah,
It's all about creating those experiences for the other people. So I don't really have the fear of judgment in that. Do I get judged? Absolutely.
sure.
Do the tweets come my way? Absolutely. But it's like at the end of the day, I can put my head on the pillow knowing I did everything I possibly could to the tune of I literally put out 2,300 calories at the LSU versus Arkansas Gymnastics meet last year in an hour and a half time. That's why I wear a Whoop band.
Yeah.
2,300 calories were thrown down, all in the name of creating an unforgettable experience. And I can tell you right now, the Arkansas student athletes will never forget that night. And it's not just because they upset the number two team in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I totally agree. Is sometimes people will ask me, I'm like, well, I just give to my attention to the people that I know that are wanting to receive something, because if I focus on the person that's sleeping in a presentation and I'm like, oh, like, why are they sleeping? Like that distracts me from the people that I'm actually trying to serve. And it's essentially the same as like the kids that are lit up having the best time of their life. It's like, bam, I'm going to give my attention to them. I'm going to go high five them. I'm going to go celebrate them because it's only going to make the experience better for them.
Right.
So,
I mean, we're kind of speaking all about this like parable of sort. We can like even get thrown back into that time. We're talking about the one.
yep,
Like, while some may chase the 99, we're talking about the one. Like, my time in childhood cancer, it was about the one kid.
yep.
My time in what I'm doing here in sport, it's about making that one kid on the Pacific Rain graphic feel like $1 million. It matters. The time you spend in all of those times totally matter.
Yeah, I love. I love. All right, last question, parting question. If you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
Oh my gosh, Ryan, come on. I will have to say, we talked a lot about curiosity on this. We talked about my three words of desire, will, and curiosity. But at the end of the day, like the people around you is really to me what life is all about. It's the people
Yeah,
you do life with. It's the people that encourage you, that you get to encourage. It's the people who show up on your hardest days and on your best days. And so my encouragement would probably be like give hugs, give high fives, make sure your people know that you're in their corner, and thank people when they're in your corner too,
yeah.
because life is meant to be done in community and we're meant to do life together. And so make sure that you continue to commend all of those people and celebrate all of those people in the highs and the lows as much as you possibly can.
Love it, dude. Love it, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping on and learning about your journey and how you got to this point. Very fascinating story. I'm always just curious. My whole like thing too is I don't know that I text you this was like I feel like stories are what move people. And that's kind of a big purpose of the podcast is to hear other people's stories and journeys and human behavior, right? Because then they become relatable and then people tend to behave in different ways and take actions on things that maybe that they're hesitant towards or fearful of. But if there's somebody that they look at on, or hear like on a podcast, it's like, oh, well, like if they can do it, I can do it too, kind of type thing. So that's kind of a big primary purpose. So I appreciate like you sharing your story, your journey, and everything that you're doing, man. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's an honor to get to share my story. I feel like it's I don't get this opportunity quite often, and after living with imposter syndrome for such a long time, it feels like now I've given myself permission to share my story.
Yeah.
And so I'm super grateful for you asking me to be on here today. So thanks.
Hell yeah. Until next time, everybody. Peace.
Peace.